A traitor who's on the run in a foreign country, may have a target on his back, can't return home, and may in fact be a political prisoner. Edward Snowden is having a pretty good couple of weeks, believe it or not. First, he got a number of nominations on the Person of the Year list for 2013, although that's always not necessarily a good thing. And now he's got two of the more powerful, well-read newspapers in the world calling on leniency or even clemency for the guy. Andrew, which papers, and more interestingly, why?
Well, Rich, we're talking about the New York Times and the Guardian in London, both of which are among the papers that have actually received and published some Snowden's secrets. But at least on the editorial pages, that's not why they suggest going easy on the expatriate. The Times calls Snowden a workplace whistleblower entitled to legal protections. In retrospect, they write, Mr. Snowden was clearly justified in believing that the only way to blow the whistle on this kind of intelligence gathering was to expose it to the public and let the resulting Fuhrer do the work his superiors would not. They add, when someone reveals that government officials have routinely and deliberately broken the law, that person should not face life in prison at the hands of that same government. Meanwhile, The Guardian is pushing for an outright pardon for Snowden. That would have to come from President Obama. Their case? For all his background in constitutional law and human rights, Mr. Obama has shown little patience for whistleblowers. His administration has used the Espionage Act against leakers of classified information far more than any of his predecessors. The debate that Snowden facilitated will no doubt be argued over in the Supreme Court. If those justices agree that Mr. Snowden did raise serious matters of public importance which were previously hidden, or worse, concealed, it is then conceivable that he could be treated as a traitor or a common felon. Well, what do those who have a say say? The head of the NSA wants to know what Snowden knows and what secrets he's spilled, but they are saying that they do not have any interest in offering him immunity to come back and reveal what he knows, and it's no dice from the commander-in-chief either.
I signed an executive order well before Mr. Snowden leaked this information that provided whistleblower protection to the intelligence community for the first time. So there were other avenues available for somebody whose conscience was stirred and thought that they needed to question government actions.
Though some have pointed out Snowden was a defense contractor, therefore may not have been eligible for those whistleblower protections the president referenced. Other politicos making for seriously strange bedfellows on Snowden. Republicans John Boehner and Marco Rubio, along with liberal Democrat Dianne Feinstein, among those who call Snowden a traitor, while Jimmy Carter, along with Ron and Rand Paul, call Snowden something of a hero. Rich?
All right, and let's bring it to our panel now. Bill O'Reilly, Republican consultant at the political communications firm, November, a columnist at Newsday. Listen, I'll put it out there. I think people misinterpreted when they saw that puff piece on the NSA at 60 Minutes. They wanted to strike a deal with him, not out of any great love of his actions here, but they're worried that the additional secrets that he may not have exposed here could put us even in further risk. So I think people, if they're pivoting from that point to say even the NSA would consider a deal, they're doing it out of necessity, not out of any great salute to patriotism. I don't think that a person taking what doesn't belong to them, acting without any discretion, just putting everything out there, then running to Russia and China, not exactly beacons of democracy, police states here of all places, try to work out a deal for himself, that we should celebrate these guys. There have been other people who have taken the government to task when they didn't think they had another avenue, and they took their medicine for it. He chose not to do that. He chose to run away, to go to a foreign country, and then say at the end of the day, now, you know, I have maybe even more here, so let's work out a deal. To me, that's not the definition of political courage, and I don't think that's what gets you clemency or whatever else. But that's my 2 cents. Let's go around the table. Bill, I start with you. Is this guy a patriot? Let's be honest, as the paper said, he pointed out a lot of things that we didn't know about the NSA, and he started a very important and meaningful conversation in this country that probably wouldn't happen if he didn't do it. But do the ends justify the means?
I think he's both. I think he's a whistleblower, and he's also a lawbreaker. And I agree with the president on this. I mean, this guy may have had the best of intentions in putting this information out there, but there are other ways to do it. There are other avenues in which to do it. He may not have known them, but you can't allow people to divulge classified information to the world. You just can't do it. And you know, whether Snowden ends up paying a price that's beyond what he did or what he meant to do is really beside the point. You cannot create precedent where you're letting people with national security intelligence leak it.
Dom?
It can't happen.
I wonder if the two newspapers, The Guardian and the New York Times, if they didn't get the exclusives, if they would still argue the same
question.
point. Of course they would not. Anyone in journalism knows that. This guy is a traitor to his country, and if he comes back, he has to be dealt with. There's no pardon or anything where he walks away. It's awful what he did. What did he do to better American lives?
Well, you know, I can argue. I certainly don't want to celebrate what he did, and I think he should face a punishment, but he certainly has exposed, Mayo, a very legitimate conversation in this country about where our constitutional protections start and stop. Since even the government, the president has appointed a commission, they came up with 40 different things that should change about the policy. So I'm in no way defending where the NSA maybe went on this one, but there is a process that we can't just have everybody who swears to take an oath on something, if they don't like it, decide that they'll go to China or Russia and start leaking it out to the world, and then we empower them to be the discretionary choices. I mean, you know the law better than any of us. How should or shouldn't this work?
Well, there's a principle called exhaustion, and it says that if you have a mechanism that's in place and you use that mechanism and it doesn't work, you're eligible to go outside of that mechanism. And we have lots of things. You'll have police review boards, civilian review boards, but the board has no teeth. So really, the opportunities that Snowden had probably were very limited. And as you said earlier, it may not actually apply to him because he's a contractor and not an actual member of the government.
Just 2 quick points on that one. I'll let you finish. I'm sorry. Is he claims that he spoke to 2 supervisors at the NSA. They claim, and there's no record of those conversations taking place. I'm not going to pass judgment if they happen or not, but there's a disagreement on that. However, to suggest that this guy, from what we know of him, knew about his whistleblower status or not, I think is we're looking back with, we're giving him a way much of a benefit of the doubt. I don't think he even tried to go down that route.
But I also think that there are laws that are meant to be broken, unfortunately. So you have bad laws, and if you have a law that puts your country in peril, if you love your country, you ought to be free to criticize your country. You ought to be able to have this conversation here. And if we really had safeguards where you had a mechanism for people to freely go in without fear of retaliation.
But he didn't just criticize his country, did he?
Well, he did. He talked about what we were doing in terms of spying on our own citizens. And then he also talked about how we're spying on our allies.
But he didn't just talk about it. He gave the intelligence the information. We had assets on the ground. He had no way of knowing what was or wasn't being imperiled. And I'm not going to try and sit here and debate who was right or not as to whether they were or not. But reckless and rash is being polite.
Just to try to get some perspective, I want to ask Mayo, the attorney here, the question. If let's say this was Exxon, and he stole a cache of information that exposed something that Exxon was putting people's lives at risk, and also he stole a bunch of other stuff too, at the same time, didn't know that he had more than enough, or maybe he did know that he had more than enough, or he did it from Facebook or another company, would he be entitled to whistleblower protection if he was an employee of one of those companies?
Well, a prosecution's office could grant him amnesty and not charge him at all and simply use him as a witness. It happens every single day. And the other issue there is that the more we talk about these things, it creates the likelihood of having more Snowdens when you know that there's no way to really voice and air this in the United States. I'd much rather have a forum where we keep people like that here. They're not leaking the information outside. There really is a body, perhaps within Congress, that actually reviews this information. And if you go back again to Watergate, the person who's demonized by many is the person who actually exposes the burglary by the government. That shouldn't be the case.
Just on a more simplistic level, we've had conscientious objectors in this country since its founding. Whether you like it or not, when Muhammad Ali decided that he didn't want to fight, he didn't go run off to Russia or China or to Canada. He said, I have an objection with this, and I will take whatever punishment comes down. We've had other people who, by the way, exposed state secrets here and had their day in court.
But Richard, there shouldn't have been a punishment, and look what happened to Muhammad Ali. Because he objected to a war, which many people look at differently now than they did back then.
But
he went
somebody
to prison.
has to make the rules, man.
But he went to prison.
You don't get to make up your own rules.
Well, you also have to pay the price if you do it. You pay the price. If a president 10 years from now decides to pardon Snowden after he gets life in prison, that's a different story.
If you are in Nazi
You pay the
Germany
price.
and the government says that they're going to engage
is
in the
not-
Holocaust,
this is not
and you
Nazi Germany.
well, but
This
see,
is
we're-
not
but
Nazi
now
Germany.
we're mixing. You know, we're really drawing a
But
fine
this
line.
is not Exxon.
It's
This is
not
the
even a
NSA,
fine
and it's not
line.
Nazi
Well,
Germany.
it could be though, and if he was in Germany under Nazi Germany, what should occur? Should he simply say, "I'm going to take my medicine and not really expose what we're planning to do here,"
But a lot of guys
or
did that.
should he?
A lot of Germans were hung up by piano wire for trying to take down Adolf Hitler.
But my point is that shouldn't be the penalty. The penalty should not be threat of you spending the rest of your life in prison because you're talking
But where do you
about.
draw the line, though, Mayo? But if I follow your logic, okay, the next person at the NSA or any other intelligence gathering, here's the first thing I think. If I don't like a program, first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to take one file. I'm going to get as many files as I can because now I got leverage. This is what I learned from Edward Snowden. Then, instead of me going up the chain of command, I'm going to find my way to get someplace to an enemy of my country so then I can further take the leverage I have with the assets I have and then try and work out a deal from 2,000 miles away. That's basically the message of this. There's no heroism.
Can I make a point? 2 points here. One is that he wasn't just exposing a law he didn't like. He was exposing a law that broke the law. He was exposing actions that were illegal.
Then why not go to the floor of Congress and say, I want to go through
because he didn't have any opportunity to. He
who?
says he tried to go through channels. And he wasn't given any
He says he
access
talked to two people. There's no record of it, Andrew. You can't just steal
Well, his
what you
case
don't
hasn't exactly
like.
been tried in a court. It's been tried in the public and in the media, and that's about it.
No,
the second thing
no,
is,
time out. You're leaving out
the
facts
second
here.
thing is he's
Andrew,
not
hold
exactly
on.
living a
It
life
has
of
been going
luxury.
through.
He's not living his laps.
There's been 3 legal judgments on it. The last one has ruled it's been legal. Okay, we're all papering it over like this.
No. Snowden's actions haven't been judged in a court of law.
But he decided a program he didn't like was illegal.
It's not a program that he didn't like. It's a program that, in all likelihood, was illegal.
In all likelihood. Look at the leaps you're making, and look at the discretion you're giving that he knows where the line should
The
be and
last
not.
judge ruled it was legal
Thank you.
out of Manhattan.
And the one before that ruled it was illegal.
Contradicting
It's
the
going
So you're
to the
going to
Supreme
pick your
Court.
court cases? I mean,
How do these things ever come to the light of day if somebody doesn't expose
never
them?
do.
But also, what Snowden did is exactly what Richard said. He didn't stumble across one NSA violation and go out there and blow the whistle. He collected as much information as he could, and he put it out there.
But there were
There's a big difference
But
there.
most of that information was exposing illegality. So if the government's engaged in illegality, the question is, where's the penalty for the government?
What he believed was
but who
illegality.
decides, man, what's
Well, when
illegal?
the
believed
Supreme
was
Court, when you violate,
All right, you
when
know,
you
stay with
violate-
that question. We're going to come back with this conversation on what is and isn't legal and what is and isn't right when it comes to public objection after this. Stay with us.